Buddy, thanks so much for listening. If you are a first timer, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, the list goes on and on. We thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, whether you're listening to us on one of the radio stations as well. We appreciate that. Obviously, you can't like, subscribe, and share, but we do appreciate you listening, and tell your friends and your family members, whatever station you're listening to us on, and also the time frame you're listening to this so they can listen as well. A very great guest today. We keep pushing more great guests on here, and we're going to keep and continue on doing that. We have Bill Walton here, the Unwoken CEO. It is the Bill Walton Show. You can see his website at thebillwaltonshow.com, money, culture, and power. And you can, again, find his show, The Bill Walton Show, on any of your podcasting platforms. Bill, thanks so much for coming on and talking with us today.
Hey, great seeing you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Bill, let's talk a little bit because it's your first time here with the audience. Talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit in detail what you've done and what you continue doing as of now.
Well, you mentioned non-woke CEO. I guess I think I'm going to start calling myself the common sense CEO.
Fair.
Anyway, I spent about 14 years running a New York Stock Exchange traded company in the investment business. Did that. We did well. We took it from 600 million in assets to a little over 10, 12 billion dollars. So it was a nice run. And then we merged the company in 2010 when the financial market melted down, if you may, as we all may recall. And then since then, I've been doing things more media related. I produced some feature films, and then just started up a webcast, grabbed a microphone and a camera a couple of years ago, and thought it'd be a hobby, and then it's kind of grown into something that's more than that. So I've been involved in a lot of political action organizations. I was chairman of the Tea Party Patriots for a little bit. I'm now vice chairman of CPAC, which is the annual conservative conference that Trump goes to every year. And I've been on a lot of not-for-profit boards in this area, Heritage and American Enterprise Institute. So I've I've uh, I've done too much. Time for a break.
Well, you continue on kicking butt, and we're grateful for that. Bill, obviously, this is the first time we're meeting virtually. We do have a lot of people, such as myself, that were very far to the left. I was personally a Bernie Sanders guy, voted for him in 16 and 20. And I know people that have listened to the show, know that. But for the newcomers, it changed a lot for me, Bill. And I want you to dive a little deep into this because I'm sure you've met people that used to be far to the left that are changing more into conservative or even moderates, independent voters in general. It changed for me back in 2020, as it did for a lot of people when, the lockdowns, the mandates, as far as that goes, and then obviously all these kids that were stuck out of school, the learning deficit is really hurting our country. And I do want to dive into that with you as well as a person that's a CEO. But let's talk about that. Talk about the changes of the Republican Party, because it seems like you've been a conservative for quite a long time and you've seen the ups and downs of the Republican Party as, have I, 35 years old. I remember, and again, it's still a business party for the Republican Party, but it seems like we're shifting gears where, and you can disagree with this, but when I was growing up, I was taught that the Democratic Party was more the party of freedom of speech. And it seems like, again, we've seen the shift in 2020 with all the censorship, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I've been censored many times throughout, having people that I know you've had on CPAC, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Peter McCullough on my show many times, got censored throughout 2020 and beyond. Now it's starting to loosen up with our new president back in power. But can you talk to the viewers and the listeners of how the Republican Party has changed since, I would say, maybe Donald Trump's got in office and back in 2015, 2016?
Well, I think Donald Trump is the catalyst for not just a change, but a massive transformation. Up until Donald Trump, I think you're right that we had sort of George Bush Republicans and a little more oriented towards business, middle class. And the Democrats were the party of labor and minorities primarily. And then, but what's happened is a lot of money came into the Democrat Party from Silicon Valley and other places, a lot of billionaires, and so they began funding, progressive movements. I'm sure some of them might have funded Bernie.
Yeah.
But in any event, where we end up today is that, and I was never all that political until I started running a public company. And
Hmm.
then I would call myself more libertarian because I began to see all the bad things the government was doing to private sector and to public companies, and thought, well, we got to shrink this. We've got to roll this thing back so we can have some freedom in America, and that includes New York Stock Exchange companies.
Right.
But so now what we have today is a populist Republican Party with Trump, and I'm totally aligned with him on that. And the big money is really with the Democrats now, and also for the people who are the lower end of the economic spectrum. So it's sort of a barbell among Democrats, and they've gotten so radicalized with the cultural agenda,
Yeah.
the LGBTQ, the men and women's sports, the open border, that kind of thing. And those are 80-20 issues. Most of Americans don't want that. They want something else. And so that's what Trump was giving them. And if you look at the coalition that he's built with Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and a lot of other people who wouldn't have dreamed of being a Republican 10 years ago, it's a totally different deal today. And this shows every sign of being the future.
Listen, I used to call my congressmen and senators. I'm originally from Rhode Island, live in Florida now with the great Governor Ron DeSantis leading the way and leading the charge down here. But when I was in college down in Boca Raton in South Florida, I was calling Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, and also the congressman at the time in Rhode Island, David Cicilline, to push Obamacare. I'll tell you what, my views have really evolved now, Bill, because what I've seen in the past 4.5 years, now we're in 2025, I don't trust the government to do anything, whether it's healthcare, whether it's gun reform, any of this stuff, because they went crazy the past 4 years. And, I was very much in favor of all this stuff before climate control, gun reform, health reform with universal health care. I don't trust these people at anything anymore. And again, I think that we're seeing more people because they really overextended in 2020, 2021, 2022. People are like, we can't trust these people anymore because they played their hand too hard. I'm sure you're hearing that and seeing that as well throughout people you speak to.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely what's happened here. I mean, not only government, they've done one thing pretty well, starting in 2020, maybe before they've done censorship pretty well.
Right. That's
And,
true.
but on the other, they're not delivering for Americans. I mean, we just saw the Labor Department put out some employment statistics, and Biden's been claiming the employment's been great, record low unemployment. Well, it turns out they basically cook the books, and
Right.
the job growth we've seen has come not among people who were born here in America, but among people who've come in, foreigners. And they've kind of hid the statistics, but it looks like in the last 4 or 5 years while Biden was president, we did create 6 million jobs, but not a single one of them went to, I exaggerate somewhat, but almost none of them went to people who were born here in America. So it hasn't been delivering for ordinary people. And that's the promise that Trump has to make changes. And I think he's doing that. I mean, look at the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
He's delivering.
Bill, just to put the exclamation point here, and go back to Biden, just to go on your point, a lot of those jobs that are coming back were jobs that were already in place, but were shut down due to the lockdown. So I know the Biden administration throughout, their time in office, 2021 through 2024, They were saying that, listen, they brought all these jobs back. Again, those were comeback jobs. We don't talk about a lot because obviously half of the country, and I hate to say this, it is derogatory, but half of the country is brain dead and they're not interested in the debt and the deficit. They're not interested in the unemployment numbers. But listen, they say 4% unemployment. That's a fake number, Bill. You and I know that. That number is fake. All the people that dropped out of the job force that are not looking for jobs, they're not in that 4% number. The unemployment rate is extremely high in this country. It's not like
Yeah.
COVID, but it is pretty damn high. Let's be realistic one on one. And I'll tell you what, Bill, no one has done anything to fix it. Again, we have the president. He's been in for 21 days. We're not thinking that he's Jesus Christ superstar. He's trying his best. He's got a lot of time left to fix some issues that have been deep driven by the Biden administration.
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, the employment numbers were phony. We could all feel it. I mean, the inflation was egregious, and you can't, what we used to buy in the grocery store we could afford now people can't. And what's going to happen though is it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit. One of the things he needs to do is to keep the tax cuts in place because if they don't make that happen, and that needs to happen later this year, we're going to see a massive tax increase, which is going to cause a lot of problems. So, but I think they'll get that fixed. And then just rolling back the regulatory state will free up people to create businesses. And if he really does an aggressive job at that, I think we could see another entrepreneurial boom, which is great. And so where where we are is that we've got a government that we don't feel with Trump is we feel like he's trying to tell the truth, and he makes a big deal out of making commitments and keeping commitments, and he's basically with all these executive orders keeping commitments right out of the box.
Right. Bill Walton, again, the unwoke CEO, excuse me, the BillWaltonShow.com. Definitely check out Bill's site and also check out his podcast on any podcasting platform that you use in general. I want to, talk as a CEO yourself and talk about the education system. The president and Elon Musk are looking into the Department of Education. We do hope that they shut it down. There is a lot of waste and bureaucracy there that needs to be taken care of. Besides the point there, again, just going back to COVID, Bill, we saw the absenteeism during COVID because obviously the schools were shut down. But again, there is still absenteeism around the country. And it seems like if you don't go to a private school, whether it's a regular private school, Catholic school, or you don't go to a charter school or have homeschooling by good parents that raised you well, you're in deep trouble in this country. So talk about that aspect from a CEO that you're trying to hire people, and the education system is so bad in this country now, where it used to be number one in the 50s and the 60s, and now it's in like the 30s or the 40s. I don't know the number, so I'm not going to quote myself on that. But it's really horrendous. And again, we don't have people going to school, the illegal immigrant issue with bringing these kids into the public schools. They don't know the language. They're creating trouble. It seems like this country, as far as education wise, is in deep trouble for 20, 30, 40 years, maybe.
Well, where do we rank in the world? 30th,
Yeah,
35th?
something like that.
And we've seen reading levels, reading scores decline for the last 5 years, and in every single state. I mean, I live in the D.C. area, and
Mhm.
D.C. ranks dead last in terms of kids who are proficient in reading. I think it's about 10% of kids that are going to D.C. schools are proficient. And as an employer, it's a massive problem. And let me add another big thing on top of that. I mean, we've got this AI revolution, what's going on, and the AI revolution is going to be changing the whole jobs picture, and a lot of people who had jobs might get put out of business because of AI, and that's going to require, if we're going to get new jobs in place, it's going to require even more educational skills, better reading skills, better math skills. But this extends not just to inner city. This is, I used to hire MBAs for in my job as doing private equity, and an awful lot of them couldn't write, and some of them couldn't do math. And you know, the Harvard Business School doesn't even teach an accounting, doesn't even offer an accounting course. So,
Gosh.
we put all the tough stuff, all the hard skills, aside in order to promote social skills or cultural education, and we're paying the price for that. And the Department of Education has done absolutely nothing to improve things. It's made things worse.
They don't teach carpentry in the schools. They don't teach any of these skills where, again, everybody is not meant to go to college. I know the liberals do push that agenda where everybody's got to go to school. That's not the case. There are some people, we do need these people, and they're making good money in plumbing, in carpentry. The list goes on and on. Technology in general. We need these people. And unfortunately, these programs don't go into the public school system anymore. And it's truly sad because, again, these are people that could be making a good money and learning a skill that they could use for the rest of their life. And it's truly sad. But again, this is what we're seeing in the school system now that, again, when you're growing up, you're seeing this. I'm growing up, I didn't see any of this stuff going on, Bill. And I went to a private Catholic school, and I'm grateful. I was very much ahead of the game when I went to college, and aced it 3.7. I'm happy for myself and I'm happy that my parents pushed me through that type of environment when I was younger. But I'll tell you what, Bill, for a lot of people, they're going through these public schools and they got to put up with a lot of gobbledygook nonsense, and it's truly sad. Bill, I want to go into the second and last segment of our interview here and talk about the Trump administration. Back in 2017, you were involved in the transition. Can you talk about the differences between the Trump administration of 2017 to the Trump administration of 2025?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's night and day. In 2016, Trump was running. Nobody expected him to win. I'm not sure whether he expected him to win, but he was running his operation out of Trump Tower,
Mm-hmm.
and he had some very effective people around him, and they were focused on winning the election. In the meantime, federal laws or federal rules cause, create resources for transition planning. And so we had a transition team down in Washington, and I headed up all the economic agencies as part of that effort. The problem was Trump was in New York. We were in Washington. He didn't like Washington. He didn't like people in Washington. He didn't believe that, anybody down here knew anything. And so therefore, all the plans we had didn't get exactly used day one, and also he didn't have any appreciation of the number of people he was going to need to bring into the government, and then he got blindsided by Russia, Russia, Russia. I mean, he could not have had a tougher start. It's really amazing that he got accomplished what he did in that first term. Second term, totally different deal. He spent 4 years, dealing with lawfare. I mean, they're trying to put him in jail. Um, they're trying to kill him, and that has a way of stealing your character. And moreover, he's got a lot of the people like Russ Vought and some others who were in the first administration. Russ is going to come has just been put back into OMB. He's got
Right.
people who knows where the bad stuff is buried. He knows what the deep state is, and what he's done in the last 3 weeks reflects that knowledge. And then there's something else going on. Because of the assassination attempt, Trump is a man who thinks in terms of how much time do I have left. And
Yeah.
he's thinking about, I got to get things done this week or next week, because he's feeling he understands that he's going after a lot of very powerful forces, and
Right.
they're not done trying to get rid of him. So this is a man very driven and very effective because of that, because everybody around him feels that, and they want to do the right thing with him.
And it's truly sad that he has to go through that every day. It's really disgusting what they did to him. Again, even when I was very far to the left, I kind of saw through a lot of the nonsense that we were pushing with Russia, with the impeachment one, impeachment two. It was a lot of nonsense. Unfortunately, Bill, in the colleges, they really brainwash you hard into the liberal hysteria, is what I call it. And it's very hard to escape it. It took me, obviously, going through 2020, 2021, and 2022 to finally escape all the gobbledygook nonsense that I was brainwashed throughout my life and obviously throughout college.
That's
You
hard
know,
for people to, that's hard for people to do, you know. I mean, that's congratulations.
listen, Bill, and I didn't even bring this up between us and everybody listening, of course, because I've talked about this with obviously, some of the doctors that you've had speak at CPAC. I personally had an issue with the COVID jab and have some adverse reactions still to this day. And due to obviously, again, what happened in 2020 and 2021 with all the gobbledygook nonsense there, and also the injury of the jab, it really made me wake up and see what is really going on in the country when the liberals are pushing this stuff. And a lot of the people that I thought were wackadoodles and crazies were the doctors and politicians that I interviewed that were trying to actually help me in the right direction. And they were on the right side of things. They weren't on the left side. The left side were trying to push me to get more medical interventions when I got sick after the second medical intervention I got back in 2021. But besides the point, Bill, you live and you learn. When the chips are down, you see who's with you and who's against you. And that's how you make decisions. That's what God pushes in life, I believe. And that's the way the cookie crumbles. I do want to kind of, tap onto what you stated of President Trump really doing a lot in the first 21 days and counting of his presidency. The president has pushed a lot of great executive orders. Unfortunately, in my mind, they are just executive orders. They're great right now, but they are not laws. Unfortunately, God willing, we hope this doesn't happen, but we could have a President Jared Paulus. We could have a President Shapiro. We could have a President Kamala Harris in 4 years from now. We hope that doesn't happen, but it could happen rather. And those executive orders could go kaput. So we need the president to pass more laws. The only law that's been passed so far is the Lincoln Riley Act, which is a great act, of course. And there is a men and women sports law that's being to keep them out, which is stuck in the Senate now. I'd like to see the president push that. I know he did the executive order a couple of days back, but how do you feel like the president's done so far with, again, they're great executive orders, but we do need the Senate and the House to get these laws fully passed so a Democrat doesn't come in and swoop in and change all these executive orders right out of the box.
Well, the way to frame the problem is that what I may think of as waste, fraud, and abuse is some congressman's pork.
Yeah.
And he or she feels like their job, three-quarters of their job is to bring goodies back to their district. And so when you look at this budget, you got to think of it in terms of who put what piece into place and who's benefiting from this money. And ethanol is an example of something that's a really bad idea. It wrecks in the internal combustion engine. It's more expensive to do than fossil fuels, and it just on and on and on. But they
It's
got to put in
Iowa.
place, and you've got Iowa, and you've got Nebraska, and we could name the other states. Uh, there's a constituency there to say we're never going to end those subsidies. So you take that and multiply it times, 340,000 subsidies that have been put in place over the years. It's a problem. And I don't know quite how Trump's going to break that logjam. I do think, though, that with what's happening with Doge, they're thinking about costs in very different ways. I mean, it's the government is basically a 19th century institution with all the 19th century technologies, desks and people, and they've got some antiquated computer systems. But you take any government service and say there are 10,000 people in the agency. With what Musk is doing with AI and things like that, they could cut that to 1,000 and put in information systems that would deliver a better, faster, cheaper process, and we'd have a government we liked a little better. So there are some really creative things you can do, but you're right. Congress is going to be a problem, and the federal and the courts are going to be a problem because
Yeah.
there are an awful lot of Obama and Biden judges in the system, and already we're seeing them blocking some of the stuff that Trump's doing.
Yeah, the birthright citizen was trying to be blocked. A lot of other things that President Trump is trying to push, they are trying to block. Just kind of as a financial guy yourself, I want to get your opinion on this. If you were advising President Trump throughout the 2024 campaign did say that he would not touch Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Obviously, those are the three big programs, along with defense spending. We go back to 2011, and I'm sure you remember this with the Simpson Bowles Commission. Adam Simpson, a former senator from Wyoming, and obviously Erskine Bowles, who was the senator from North Carolina. Obama, they did cut a little bit of spending, not that much, and then they kind of blew it up with more spending in the second term. Obama didn't do much because that was, again, back in 2011, and the president was up for re-election in 2012. That would have been a nice start to cutting spending. It wouldn't have diffused the whole issue. But let's go into 2025, Bill, and talk about, again, the president said that he would not touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but those, along with defense, are the big budget items. If we don't touch those, then we can't really do that much. I mean, again, Doge can do their job and Elon can tinker around, and that's great. They're going to cut the condoms for Gaza and all this silly nonsense that was in the State Department, USAID, all these funds that they're going to cut. That's great. But again, it's not going to the bigger problem. And again, whether we like it or not, people my age that are 35 and younger are going to get some issue with Social Security, whether it's cut or you're going to have to work longer. That's, another story for another day. But we have to do something about these programs because, again, they are ballooning the deficit.
Well, yes, that's a problem. And I know they're going to be spending some time working on how all those programs are administered. But I don't see them touching the benefits, at least
Mm-hmm.
not while Trump is president. So I think he'll honor that commitment. But there are an awful lot in the Medicare and Medicaid programs that the dollars do not reach the beneficiaries. They end up swallowed by the process and the bureaucracy. And the same thing's true to a lesser extent with Social Security. So if you think about, $100 million you think is going to go to Social Security, I don't know, what, 20 million, 30 million of that could be eaten up by administrative cost. So there are ways to look at the way these programs are run where there are opportunities, but without cutting a dime of benefits to people. Now, you can get into the question about whether those benefits are justified. I mean, I'm now, when I was 35 years old, I thought, gee, I'm never going to see Medicare or Social Security. Well, here I am a little older than maybe twice as old as that, and it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And Medicare, my God, it pays for everything. And so it's
Right.
it's but one could argue, and I'll make that argument, that it pays for too much. And we
But
really
but
need
to
to
be fair, Bill, sorry to interject on you, but to be fair, and we're not trying to talk about age here, but we go back when this really was started was under George W. Bush, then into Obama, then obviously Trump, Biden, and now we're back to Trump again. And we could go into, and I'm not trying to dump all over President Trump because, again, George W. Bush with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Obama with his issues with Libya, and going into the Middle East as well. There was issues there. But the CARES Act, again, in COVID, the only congressman or woman to vote against that was Thomas Massie out of Kentucky, libertarian mindset that you speak about at the beginning of our conversation. That's his mindset. He was the only one to stand up against the spending. Again, this is not all on President Trump. This is on Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, other Republicans in Congress as well. But the CARES Act did do a lot of bad things, along with the Build Back Better plan, obviously during the Biden administration.
Well, I'm not sure where we're going with this. I mean, do you think, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're going to be members of Congress that don't want to change much. I mean,
I guess I'm just kind of
that's where
say,
we
Bill,
are.
that I would say it's both parties that have been screwing this up. The
Oh
last time
yeah,
we
I mean,
really had,
George W. Bush is not, George W. Bush came out for Kamala, or he didn't actually come out for, but I'm pretty sure he voted for.
well, I'm sure you're right on that.
And
I
my wife is chiming in from the other room. I'm pretty sure I'm right. So, the Bushies are not
right,
any
yeah,
friends of Trump. And also, I just gratuitously, I think it was a mistake to go into Iraq and Afghanistan the way we did and waste all those American lives and those trillions of dollars. There are a lot smarter ways to fight the war on terror, but that's another subject for another day. Yeah, I mean, these are barriers, and I think maybe the only way you could really do it is you could got to get everybody and say, look, and shame them. You got to get people. They did this with the military bases after World War II. Talk about pork. Every state in the country seemed to have a military base, and when they ended up in the 50s, they had way, way, way too many. And so they got Congress to get together and they all sort of decided, well, I'll give up this one and I'll give up that one. You got to figure out some way that everybody shares the pain more or less equally. And Trump's a deal maker.
right.
And, there could be a deal to be made. I don't know what the details would be, but everything's negotiable.
Last couple questions, but again, to just put the exclamation point on that, Bill, I agree with you 100%. And the last time we've really had some sort of budget reform on the debt and the deficit was back during Bill Clinton years with Newt Gingrich with the Republican Congress that actually put some good plans in place. I think it's really sad, but not
I
saying
now
that
think Bill
Bill.
Clinton. I now think Bill Clinton was a better president than George Bush, even though I voted for George Bush twice. So there you go.
Yeah, again, we're not saying that I mean, Bill Clinton rather is Jesus
Maybe not the
Christ,
maybe
but
not the morals part of it, but at least the policy part of it.
yeah, no, it was way better. And again, that was due to the Republican Congress putting the pressure on a Democrat president like Bill Clinton. I do think politics was a lot more bipartisan and trying to get things done for the people than it is now. Unfortunately, it's very divided. Just to kind of move into the last few questions, this is going into an audience question, Bill. When we talk about Elon Musk and JD Vance, obviously JD Vance, the vice president, Elon Musk obviously has done great things throughout his life. He's obviously ran very successful companies and really an innovative man in general. And he, keeps on innovating with his companies and many inventions. It seems like the president is deferring. Again, we're only 21 days in, but it seems like the president is deferring more towards Elon Musk than he is to JD Vance. In my opinion, and you can disagree with this, Bill, that I believe that JD Vance is obviously as vice president the next in line. We hear a lot about Donald Trump Jr., who was the one that pushed JD Vance to be vice president. So he does have that Trump backing in general from the family, along obviously with the president. But it does seem like the president is more involved with Elon Musk than he is with JD. Do you see that as well? Do you feel like that's an issue? What is your opinion on?
I don't think it's an issue. I mean,
Okay.
it's you mentioned, I've got the CEO outlook, and you've hired different people for different tasks. And right now, what we need to have done is what Doge is doing, and there couldn't be a better man on the planet to do this than
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk. And I think he'll do what he does, and he'll do it for a while. Remember, he's got a few other fairly big companies he's running, so he's not going to be able to be with us forever, but he can certainly get this thing launched. JD Vance has got a very different role, and he's doing a lot building bridges with Congress. He was a senator. He's going to work when we get into the legislative mix. He's going to play a much more visible role, and Musk is going to have no role in that. And then also don't forget, Elon Musk was born in South Africa. He can't have presidential aspirations because he's not eligible. So I think right now you're seeing Musk, but then when we get into the ugly part of making a bit getting a bill passed, we're going to see a lot and hear from a lot from JD Vance.
When we hear about the reconciliation bills, President Trump says he is more inclined to do one big, beautiful bill. The Republican House wants to do two bills. The, the Republican Senate wants to do one bill like the president does. What do you feel like is going to end up happening? And again, whether they do one bill or two bills, what do you hope that's in those bills? I know you spoke a lot about the Trump tax cuts, but besides that, of course.
Well, this is not my area of expertise, but I know
Okay.
enough, just enough to opine. One big bill is kind of like that big everybody making a compromise situation I described. Everybody's got something they want to get, and you put it into one big bill, then you're going to do a lot of trading with other people's issues, and so you can probably get more done with one bill, even though it's going to be, maybe a little uglier process. If you put in two bills or three bills, you may not find you've got the votes you had because these single issue people won't play along.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think we got to do one bill, end it, and then move on to the many other issues in our country that need to be solved. Last question. Can you leave the audience with some hope, Bill? Obviously, there's a lot of doom and gloom in our society. We are happy that the president is in power, but between the fires, the issues in North Carolina before the election, the fires in California, the plane crash over in DC, where you are. There is still a lot of doom and gloom as there is some hope, but leave the audience with some hope as we close.
Well, I've got a different list. I mean, we've got the new president, I believe it's in Argentina, who
Right.
has totally transformed that country in a year and a half. We've got the Trump uh, type populist movement
Mhm.
also happening in Europe, and the European Union and all the elites in Europe, which are worse than the elites here in the United States, are on the ropes. I mean, Angela Merkel drove Germany into the ground with her green energy policies, and now everybody's beginning to push back against that. So worldwide, we're beginning to see a freedom movement happening. And I mentioned, vice chairman of CPAC, we're doing programs all over the world, and people are into that. I think the other thing is let's not forget everything we just talked about. Trump's for real, and the people he's got in this thing are for real, and there are changes being made. And if you were concerned about too much DEI, if you're concerned about the climate change agenda, he's aimed at stomping that out. So uh, yeah, I was a little bit in the despairing camp in October of 2024, but now I'm not. I think we've got lines of action, and it's going to be messy, and we're not going to get everything, but at least we're moving forward. And my hope is that we've got just not 4 years of Trump, but we've got 4 years of Trump, and maybe we'll borrow Ron DeSantis from you in Florida for the
Mhm.
next one, or JD is going to step in. I think we've got a lot of people that are just ready to go to continue what Trump has started.
Bill Walton, the unwoke CEO here on Fire Breathing Rob. It is the BillWaltonShow.com. Money, culture, and power. Definitely check out the Bill Walton Show on any podcasting platforms. Bill, thanks so much. I hope we can do another show. I would have loved to dive deeper in financial issues with you, but
Love
I
it.
know time is running out,
Love
but
it.
we'll try
Love it.
again.
Well, let's do money. Let's do money. I like that topic.
Sounds like a
Anyway,
plan.
thanks for
Thanks.
having me on.
All right. Thanks so much, Bill.
Great.
One,
Thanks.
one question.